Hey Doug, it's Tactical Faith. It's been a while since we've talked. For those who don't know, Doug Powell is on Tactical Faith's board, and it's been an honor for me not to only to know him and to watch his career unfold. He's just a man of many talents, and has been a good friend of mine for almost a decade now. But Tactical Faith came alongside his ministry probably a year or so ago, if not more, to sponsor a Shroud of Turin exhibit. And to date, looking at the data this afternoon on what we've done and well, at least what I've known we've done, Doug, it's been a very popular exhibit. We purchased a Shroud of Turin replica from the official photographer of the STURP team, which was the team that researched in the late 70s the Shroud of Turin. His name is Barry. Doug came to me a few years ago and said, "Hey, here's an opportunity to buy a real replica of the Shroud, and I want to go around and study it." So we did that, and we started a section of our website devoted to Doug's budding interest, and even more so in biblical archaeology. So, Doug, thanks for coming on board. I wanted to update a few things because it seems like the Shroud has been in the news as of late. I've been watching a bunch of videos and kind of sending them to you because I'm interested anytime somebody starts talking about the Shroud. But what has been going on lately in terms of the Shroud news, and maybe also give us an update of where you are on the Shroud and the presentation. And I know you're doing some education behind it as well.
Well, I'll go from the back of that question toward the front. So the
Fair
thing
enough.
I'm doing right now is I'm finishing up a program in postgraduate studies in the Shroud that I'm getting through the Ateneo Pontificio Regina Apostolorum, which is a pontifical institute in Rome. And although I'm doing it online, I'm not actually there. And in fact, one of my professors turned out to be Barry Schwartz, who was on the STURP team and the guy that took the photo and who we bought the Shroud from and who died about 2 months ago, unfortunately. So just completed all the work for that. And I continue to present on the Shroud whenever I get a chance. And this last week or two, there have been a number of posts that have kind of gone viral about the Shroud. And there were two different things that hit at the same time. One was a new scientific report dating the Shroud, and the other was an AI image of the Shroud.
Okay.
So, which do you want to do first?
Let's do well, let's don't do the AI image first. Let's do the other one. Tell me about it.
Okay. So the other one, this new report that has a new dating method for the Shroud is not, we have to kind of define new because this report was actually published about 2.5 years ago. And it,
Oh,
for
wow.
whatever reason, is just now hitting my feed, at least. You know, I saw it kind of get widely reported and blown up. But if you look at the date on it, it's from about April 2022 and comes out of the Institute of Crystallography in Italy. And it's a team of 5 scientists who used a new method for dating the linen sample from the Shroud. And this form of X-ray dating, which is wide-angle X-ray scattering, is a common technique on that. You know, it's not like a newly developed technique, but it has apparently new applications for dating linen. It hasn't really been applied this way historically. And so there was an earlier report by this team, or at least members from this team, where they applied it in that way. And then a couple of years ago, they turned their attention to the Shroud. And one of the members of this team is a very a relentless investigator into the scientific properties of the shroud. So he's done a whole lot of work in a bunch of different ways. This is really a report on its chemistry. And so what they did, this whole X-ray scattering, wide angle scattering thing. Now, I'm not a scientist, okay? So you can't quiz me too hard on exactly how this all works. But what is going on here is that they have a thread, a single thread of linen from the same area where the sample was taken for the 1988 radiocarbon dating, except that this is pure linen. There's no cotton mixed into it. The sample that was actually dated 1988, the radiocarbon sample, has a mixture of cotton and linen and is therefore not representative of the shroud as a whole, which is a linen cloth. So there, it's probably a patch that was sewn in the Middle Ages, and that's what ended up getting dated. So they have a piece of linen, pure linen, and this is a non-destructive test. So that means that this thread can be used by other scientists to replicate these results if they're accurate results. And so what they did is they tested. So linen has it's composed of, in part, of cellulose. And so the idea is you measure the degradation of the cellulose, and you find you could use that in order to date it. And so what they did is they not only tested the thread from the shroud, but they had 5 other threads that they tested of known age that were linen. They had 2 that were from around the year 2000, so contemporary threads. They had 1 from the Middle Ages, so around 544 to 600, right around there. They had 1 from the 1st century that was found at Masada, a little bit south of Jerusalem, and that was dated between 55 and 74. That was, and they date that from historical sources and also radiocarbon dating. And then they had a thread from an Egyptian cloth that was 3000 BC. So they ran the same X-ray scattering, wide angle scattering test on all these, and they were able to assign kind of a score of degradation that they saw. And the one that so it doesn't come up with like a specific date. What it does is it comes up with a numerical value that is how you understand the degradation. Okay, so you don't look at the data and you go, oh, okay, we're just counting backwards, and this is how many years old it is, and so it's from this year. It doesn't work like that. It's just a form of degradation. So you compare the degradation from the Shroud of Turin to the other known date samples, and it's almost exactly the same as the one from Masada, which dates from between 55 and 74. And so the report says that it confirms the tradition that this is a cloth that is 2,000 years old, and that's about all you can say. It's not absolute proof of anything. The report concludes by saying that in order to confirm this result, more samples from other areas of the shroud need to be taken, and this needs to be replicated in that way. And of course, even though this was published in a peer-reviewed scientific magazine, scientific journal, other people within the scientific community, within the same range of discipline, are still interacting with these results. So they could be, they may stand or fall. But if the science is right, then it will stand. And what it does is it simply indicates that this really is a 2,000-year-old cloth. It doesn't mean the Shroud of Turin is authentic, and it doesn't mean the image of the man on the cloth is Jesus. All it means is the cloth is probably 2,000 years old. But that's it in itself is huge news if it is supported by further investigation, because the radiocarbon date from 1988 put it in the right in the Middle Ages, the late Middle Ages, and that's why it had a reputation for so long of being a medieval fake when it's not. When there's a lot of evidence that that's like an outlier among the tests ever done on the shroud, but it also is the bad rap that stuck to the shroud. So this is just another way of showing that there is something different about that radiocarbon test from all the other tests that have ever been on the shroud, and it shows that it is more of an outlier and not the one definitive test that dates it.
Yeah, and as Christians, we want to be as fair as possible with anything. And it seems to me, and that's one of the things I've always appreciated about how you display and present the shroud. You lay out the data from what we know, and you never talk about certainty. And to some extent, you're talking about probability, and you're stacking the factual evidence to a case. Well, you're making a case for it one way or the other. And I always appreciated that. And we'll get back to that here in a second. I want to ask you a further question about that. But tell
Well,
me,
let me say one other thing, and
okay,
that is that the headlines that I've seen that accompany the that report don't accurately reflect the report because they talk about proof that the shroud is
proof.
authentic or
Yeah,
proof that
right.
it's it's really Jesus or whatever. It's not proof of any of those things. It just indicates it's a 2,000-year-old cloth. That's it. And that also needs to have more work done on it to confirm it and corroborate it.
Again, we're just stacking the evidence one way or the other, right? I mean, that just
Yeah.
helps the evidence. It doesn't necessarily make it certain.
Right. But this is one of the things that is a little frustrating about the topic of the shroud is that it a lot of people will overstate the case for it. And
Exactly.
it's a pretty compelling case without overstating it anyway. It doesn't do
Right.
any good to try to make this stuff say more than it actually does.
But we're desperate, right? Christians to some extent are desperate and grasping for anything that's tangible and physical when it comes to Christ Jesus. It's always been that way.
Yeah.
It seems to me in the Protestant community, even more so that, especially lower end Protestants, we're desperate to have some sort of tangible evidence of Christ Jesus. And it doesn't, and I'm not saying it doesn't work that way. I'm just saying the shroud has always been one of those things that you want it to be true because it's almost if we could figure out a way to make it undeniable and certain, well, it's a physical representation of something that we know intuitively when is true or not true. It's just again. A part of the reason why I've always enjoyed what you have done is you've always kind of just laid the case out. This is what we know. These are things that we don't know. So give me a little quickly, what about this view of Jesus's face that they've taken from the shroud?
Oh, the AI thing that's going
Yeah.
around. That's a fascinating image, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, So I don't know a ton about AI imaging and how this exactly works, but this came from a company called Midjourney, and I believe the Daily Express in the UK is who did the used Midjourney in
Right.
order to do this imaging. But what's interesting about this particular image that came out in August is that there's another one that Mid Journey did back in October, and it doesn't look the same.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know. I'm sure these things are always being the programs are being upgraded and things like that. But there's an equally fascinating image from just last fall, and the difference really between the images in terms of how they look is that the one from last fall looks more Jewish to me than the one from August. The one from August is a startling image, but it looks a little Anglo-Saxon to me.
Sure.
It kind of looks like somebody in Kenny Loggins' band from 1978 who just got off stage or hasn't washed it. He's kind of sweating stuff. So he looks. Otherwise, the I mean the rest of the features of the image are pretty amazing, pretty
So
startling.
are we gonna get a Kenny Loggins shroud too? Is that what's next? Uh, well, anyways, that's all I really wanted to update people on. I thought since we already had somebody that was so knowledgeable about this, it would be fun to just get on and kind of get some clarity about what's kind of floating around. Do you have anything set lately for your Shroud tour, or maybe even give people an update of how if they want to have you somewhere, where would they go?
Well, let's see. The next one that's on the books isn't until November, and that is in Cannon Beach, Oregon,
Oh,
where they shot
yeah,
Goonies.
yes.
So,
Always,
what better place to come see the Shroud?
I always
Uh,
hate you when you get to go up there and you send pictures. I've been once, but would love
yeah,
to go again. What lucky folks. In fact,
you
I
s-
think though I have you for a private showing in October of the Shroud. So
oh, you do. Okay. Well, we'll all everybody come to Matt's house in October, and I'll show you the Shroud. Um,
we'll watch college football and then look at the Shroud. So,
okay.
and then talk about how we're
Uh,
Kenny Loggins Shroud while we do it. So. Well, thanks, Doug. I appreciate you coming on and doing a short little clip
Sure.
for us.
Oh, hey, well, actually, let me can I plug a couple of
Plug
things?
whatever you want to plug, Doug.
Okay. Well, if you want to have the Shroud come to your town with the full size museum replica, or as Matt calls it, the real replica,
The
which
real
the
replica.
real replica, then you can go to dougpowell.com and use the contact form there, and we can talk about getting the Shroud your way. And if you want to learn about all the evidence behind the Shroud and its relationship to the face cloth that may have been around Jesus's
Yes.
head that you read about in John 20, verse 7, I have a novel about it called The Invisible Thread, and you can check that out. That's also at yeah, dougpowell.com. And there you go. I think that's all I
Yeah,
got.
so yeah, Doug's, for those who don't know, Doug is an author who is trying to catch John Calvin on how many books he's written in his lifetime. But you got a lot of books to go. But you do have a
Uh,
lot of books. So if Tactical Faith is proud to be a sponsor for you, and not only the Shroud, but to support your ministry and to support the things that you're doing. You're highly talented and always been very approachable, and you've always been very fair. And so one of the things I've been telling my students at Stanford lately, and I'll end with this, is in a world that we live in that's constantly creating habits of behavior that are against what I called focused attention, which is the ability to look at something and look at it for so long that you lose time, right? And Paul calls us to contend with things, but also to think on things that are weighty and good and true. And the only way that you can do that along and being fair is to be the kind of Christian that takes ideas and all ideas and think through them and contemplate on them and weigh them, is what it says in Scripture. So the Shroud of Turin for many might be one of those things. Why are you doing this? Why is Tactical Faith doing it? Why is even Doug, a Presbyterian and a Baptist, dealing with the Shroud? Well, we know what our charge is, and our charge is to be called as Christians to take every idea and capture it. This happens to be an idea that's floating out there and an important, significant one, and we want to use our minds and our reason to look at it and examine it and have fun with it. And we also use this as an opportunity to showcase to others how Christians can think and reason and to be a part of the world of conversation and ideas. And so thank you, Doug, for being a part of this. Thank you for being a part of Tactical Faith, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.